Hi, welcome to day 4 of Peaceful Pathways. We're already on day 4. Peaceful Pathways, if you're new and this is your first day checking it out, is a serene environment focused on cultivating relaxation, mindfulness, acceptance, and awareness. I'm Michelle, your guide along the path. I am a mental health therapist with over 14 years of experience, an aspiring author currently querying agents, a peacemaker, and an advocate for those without a voice. Today, we are going to be discussing radical acceptance, including embracing ourselves, others, and the world with willing hands. So, like I said, we will be talking about understanding radical acceptance. So, what radical acceptance is, acceptance of the self, acceptance of others, and acceptance of the world. And then we'll be practicing the exercise of willing hands. So, before we jump in, I drew a card from the Rethink affirmation cards for a mindful life and daily actions. And today I drew courage. It says, I voluntarily venture beyond my comfort zone with unshakable courage, accepting dangers as stepping stones on the path to my objectives. Fear has no power over me because I am resolute in my commitment to realize my dreams and I pursue them passionately. We have a theme going on with courage, bravery, power. Um, I drew a lot of those throughout the week. So today I like the piece of accepting danger as part of our journey. Things don't always go as planned, and there is an aspect of taking healthy risks in order to accomplish our goals. We definitely don't achieve anything if we stay within the confines of our comfort zone. There are times where we have to push ourselves to be uncomfortable and accept that there are some potential dangers involved with that, typically just the stress that can bring inside of ourselves. All right, so on that note, we will jump in by understanding radical acceptance. So, radical acceptance, the concept, the term, originates from dialectical behavior therapy. That's a therapeutic modality that I was first trained in when I became a therapist. And it's really aimed at coping with emotional pain. There is a lot more involved with DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, but that's just kind of the gist of it. So, radical acceptance is one of the skills that helps us to tolerate stress. It also has its roots in Buddhist philosophy, because it emphasizes acceptance of the present reality. We're not fighting with what's going on in our present moment. So the purpose is actually to reduce suffering by fully embracing painful realities instead of engaging in things that are consistent with denial or avoidance. So, when we engage in avoidance sort of coping strategies, we're trying to get rid of the stress by just pretending it doesn't exist. And that's not an effective way of coping with stress when it arises. So, radical acceptance teaches us how to accept that pain and joy are simultaneously part of our journey, part of our path, of this pathway of life, of existence. So, mindfulness and non-judgment If you're noticing, there are some consistent themes of ways to manage and reduce stress. So, there is an aspect of mindfulness and non-judgment in radical acceptance. So, the present moment allows us to really focus on the current experience is rather than focusing on distractions or even getting stuck in the past or future. And then being non-judgmental really helps us to practice radical acceptance because we become non-judgmental of experiences that may be painful, either emotionally or physically. So we just notice them and we radically accept that this is what's going on in our life right now. There are some misconceptions about acceptance. It's often mistaken for resignation or passivity, which can lead to misunderstandings about its true nature. So, radical acceptance definitely does not make us passive in any way, shape, or form. Um, I would argue that avoidance probably makes us more passive because we're avoiding what's going on rather than addressing the situation at hand. So, radical acceptance actually allows us to actively address the situations that are contributing to our stress. And that radical acceptance involves like an active consciousness process. Um, that creates that inner peace and enables positive change. So that goes along with that. That is passive and it reinforces what I was saying that radical acceptance is an active process, not a passive one. And it does promote that peace and allows us to take action to create that positive change and build some positive momentum. So we'll move into how we radically accept ourself, our pros and cons, our strengths and our weaknesses. No human being, at least that I've met, is perfect or has a perfect life. So we want to start by accepting ourselves. So part of accepting ourselves is acknowledging our limits. So when we recognize our limits without judgment, it helps us to set achievable goals and expectations instead of setting unrealistic expectations for ourselves. When we set too high or too demanding expectations for ourselves, that definitely contributes to stress. So, the more that we can set realistic expectations of how much we can truly get done in a day, then the lower our stress is going to be. We can also work on that self-acceptance, which encourages self-compassion, it reduces frustration and self-blame. We just accept that we're perfectly imperfect and we can be compassionate towards ourselves no matter what. So it allows us to let go of self-criticism and shame. We can release negative judgment or harsh self-criticism, that inner critic, to break destructive emotional cycles and really open a path towards healing. Radical acceptance also allows us to embrace vulnerability, which allows for that greater self-compassion and emotional growth. When we're vulnerable, when we open ourselves up to vulnerability, we're able to share our personal experiences with those around us. Granted, we want them to be trustworthy individuals and within healthy boundaries. So we don't necessarily want to overshare, but we do want to be able to share and experience vulnerability to be able to create healthy relationships with those around us, including ourselves, building a healthy relationship with the self. And then we can also practice self-kindness. So, by being kind to ourselves, it actually helps build some resiliency. To practice self-kindness, we can use positive self-affirmations. We can be gentle with ourselves. And through radical acceptance, we can accept ourselves for who we are, how we feel, the thoughts we have, wholly and completely in the present moment. So, some strategies for self-compassion, how we can be kind or compassionate to ourselves is through some mindful self-awareness that helps us recognize our feelings without judgment, which helps promote emotional balance. Like I talked about, we can use those positive affirmations, which also help build our confidence. And self-compassion also involves regular self-care routines. So, just quickly in a nutshell, self-care involves a lot of different aspects of taking care of the self. It includes physically taking care of ourselves, practicing good hygiene practices, exercising, eating healthy, getting enough sleep at night. It also includes taking care of our mental or psychological self. So, doing courses like this is part of self-care because you're learning ways that you can reduce stress effectively. And then journaling is another great way. Anything that's creative, all of those things can help with psychological self-care. And then we also have social self-care, where we spend some time with our friends, our family, and our community as a whole. And that's a good segue into radical acceptance of others. This can be hard for people. It can be hard to understand our differences and appreciate diversity. Uh, Each of us does come from a unique background, and having different experiences definitely helps to build social connections, learning from one another, and facilitating some mutual respect, even for those who are different than we are. And it helps to reduce judgment. In today's day and age, there's a lot of us versus them mentality instead of understanding and recognizing that we actually have way more similarities than we have differences as humans. We are all human beings. We are all on this planet for a reason. We all have meaning and purpose in life. And so when we understand those differences, it helps us reduce bias against others and builds empathy um, for those around us. So accepting others, radically accepting others, also helps us manage expectations in our relationships. We can have realistic expectations for our friends, family, partner, coworkers, which helps to reduce conflict in relationships instead of having unrealistic expectations for others. It also helps prevent disappointment because we accept that people are infallible just like we are fallible. So other people definitely can fail as well. So it builds trust with other people um, by letting go of those unrealistic expectations and just accepting the people around us for who they are, including their strengths and weaknesses. And it encourages respect. We respect others when we acknowledge them for who they are, and it creates some flexibility in those relationships too, because we're not expecting people to adhere to unrealistic sort of standards. And so we can be a little bit more flexible in our relationships with others. Radical acceptance towards others builds that empathy, like we briefly talked about, and non-judgment. So, empathy allows us to feel and understand other people's emotions and their perspectives, essentially it allows us to put ourselves in other people's shoes. Will we ever be able to fully and completely walk in another person's shoes? No. But empathy does give us the best sort of experience we can in order to understand others. So when we radically accept others for who they are, we can definitely feel more empathy towards them, including when they're struggling. And then having that non-judgmental attitude definitely builds some openness and compassion towards diverse experiences and viewpoints. Mm, We can definitely build ourselves up more when we surround ourselves with people who think differently than we do. And lastly, we get to practice radical acceptance of the world. This one can be tough. All radical acceptance in general can be really challenging. So, when we accept the world for what it is, it allows us to face our environment and our reality and uncertainty rather than avoiding or running away from it. So we recognize what's beyond our control, and when we let go of what's outside of our control and only focus on what's within our control, it reduces our stress and releases an emotional burden because we're not trying to control everything around us. We're only focused on what is within our control. And as we're talking about, that helps build resilience if we continue to fight the reality of how our world is, then we're not going to be able to fully be able to learn the lessons we need to learn in our current realities, in the way the world is right now. So, when we're able to accept the world for what it is now, it really helps us to recover from those challenges and adapt if we need to, instead of keep going the way we are. The definition of insanity, if you've heard that one before, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Radical acceptance allows us to do something different if we're not getting the results that we want, because we're accepting, even if it's uncomfortable or painful to accept, that what we're doing isn't working for us. And radical acceptance allows us to find peace in the imperfect world. So we can embrace impermanence. The only thing that's you can count on in life is change. That's another one of those kind of popular sayings. So when we're in a chaotic environment, we can recognize that things aren't going to be this way forever. They will change. Um, so it allows us to basically reduce our stress because we know we're not going to experience the same stress forever. It also allows us to accept imperfection. The world is full of flaws and imperfections, and that allows us to have compassion, um, t- and also some personal growth that welcomes in some inner peace. So, just as we have strengths and weaknesses, other people have strengths and weaknesses, our world as a whole has strengths and weaknesses. But we're all here for a reason, and we can find peace and promote peace in our world. Radical acceptance allows us to respond constructively to challenges. It empowers us. So, as I talked about, it enables proactive and wise responses rather than passive reactions to challenges. If you refuse to accept reality and engage in avoidance strategies, For example, people drink or use drugs to kind of numb their pain or avoid reality, avoid what's going on, escape. And radical acceptance allows us to sit with the challenges, to accept yeah, the world is going through a challenging time. There are some harsh realities in our world today. So we can figure out if we're accepting there are some uncomfortable, unpleasant realities of our world. We can problem solve how we're going to respond to those instead of avoiding them. It also allows us to respond with openness, to engage in effective problem solving when facing those difficulties. All right. So our activity for today is willing hands. So just what willing hands is, it's a symbol of readiness. We put our palms up in an upward direction to show that we're willing, that we're ready to face challenges and embrace new opportunities with openness. When our hands are down, we're a little bit more closed off, or, if we're wrapped up, if our arms are crossed, we're more closed off. Whereas if we're open with our hands up, then we have a much more open and to the world and to allow us to face the challenges that we're facing. So it also allows us to have compassion towards ourselves and others, encouraging empathy and kindness. All right, well, it's time to practice willing hands. So, like I said, I guess, first of all, you focus on something that's unpleasant in your life, something that you don't like. Maybe it's a change going on, something that's impacting yourself. Maybe it's something within someone else that you don't like or that's unpleasant, or maybe it's something going on in our world right now. So, whatever it is, focus on that unpleasant thing. Hold your palms up. I extend your arms out a little bit, but you can see my palms are up. And then repeat the following. I don't like this. I can't change this. I accept this. Notice your observations of the activity and write them down in your journal. If you need to grab your journal, feel free to pause and grab it. And I will set the timer so we can spend 3 minutes journaling about our thoughts and emotions when we accepted something that was unpleasant in our life. Hey, hopefully that went well for you. Um, so willing hands and that practice also uses our body language to reinforce acceptance. As we talked about, using open hand gestures can indicate that we're receptive and open towards communication, and our relaxed hand and body posture also helps to reduce tension and create that mental state of acceptance. So, how to incorporate that into daily practice when we just did with willing hands? Um, we can use it daily. We can do exactly what we did, just thinking about something unpleasant and putting our hands up, our palms up, saying, I don't like this. I can't change this. I accept this. We can also commit to acceptance. So we may just do something every day. We may do it during an unpleasant situation. And kind of do that at any point in time. All right. Well, we made it through day 4 of Peaceful Pathways. So to recap, radical acceptance encourages the embrace of ourselves and others with mindfulness and compassion. And it also allows us to practice willingness through willing hands that supports growth towards peace and resiliency. All right. Well, just a reminder, this Saturday, September 27th, from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock Central Time, is our monthly healing sanctuary. That is where the paid subscribers come together to encourage mindfulness, connection, and personal growth. We practice some guided practices, reflective exercises, and also have opportunities to share. So I hope to see you this Saturday, September 27th from 1 to 2 Central Time. Make sure to adjust the time if you're in a different time zone. Otherwise, I will see you again here tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.